Ladies and gentlemen, today we stand at a crucial crossroad in our lives, seeking understanding of the process that takes us from where we are to where God desires us to be. We often look at elevation as a public act, a moment of recognition. But I tell you today that before any elevation, God has a work to do within you that begins in the silence of solitude. Solitude is not a punishment, it is an essential part of God's process in preparing us for the purpose He has ordained for our lives. In a world filled with distractions and noise, it is easy to lose sight of the purpose we are meant to fulfill. But it is in the quiet moments when the world is still and our minds can focus that we are able to hear clearly from God. In solitude, we can connect with Him on a deeper level, where His voice is not drowned out by the chaos of everyday life. It is in this space that God reveals to us the purpose He has designed us for, and it is only through this intimate connection that we can truly understand our calling. God often calls His people into solitude before He reveals their true purpose. Think about the lives of many biblical figures. Moses spent 40 years in the desert, far from the distractions of Egypt, before God called him to lead His people out of slavery. David spent countless hours alone in the fields, caring for sheep before being anointed as king. Jesus Himself withdrew into the wilderness for 40 days to pray and commune with His Father before beginning His public ministry. These examples show us that there is a divine purpose in solitude, a purpose that cannot be fully realized without first stepping away from the noise and distractions of the world. When we are alone, we can finally stop seeking the approval of others. Too often, our lives are driven by the expectations of those around us, our families, friends, peers, and society. We look for validation in our achievements, our relationships, and our possessions. But the truth is, none of these things can fulfill the deeper longing in our hearts. It is only when we are alone that we begin to realize that the approval we seek is not from people, but from God. In solitude, we learn to find our worth in His love and purpose for our lives, rather than in the opinions of others. We stop comparing ourselves to the world and begin to focus on what God has called us to do. Solitude also provides the opportunity for self-reflection and growth. In the busyness of life, we rarely take the time to stop and assess who we truly are. We are often too caught up in the demands of work, relationships, and responsibilities to examine the condition of our hearts. But when we are alone, we are forced to confront the deeper questions of our existence. What are our passions? What are our fears? What is holding us back from fulfilling our potential? It is in solitude that we come face to face with our true selves, our strengths and weaknesses, our dreams and insecurities. Through this self-reflection, God begins the work of transformation, shaping us into the people He has created us to be. It is a process of growth that cannot be rushed, and it is only in solitude that we are able to fully surrender to this transformation. In those quiet moments, we are able to hear God's voice clearly and in turn gain a deeper understanding of our purpose. We are no longer distracted by the opinions and voices of others. Instead, we listen intently to the call of God, who reveals to us the unique path He has designed for us to walk. This is where the seeds of our purpose are planted, nurtured, and prepared to grow. Only in solitude can we hear God's direction for our lives, and only in solitude can we receive the strength and wisdom necessary to fulfill that purpose. Self-discovery and growth are deeply intertwined with the process of being alone. It is often in the moments of solitude that we come face to face with who we truly are. The busyness of life and the constant distractions of relationships, work, and societal pressures often mask our true identity. We become so absorbed in meeting the expectations of others or fulfilling external roles that we forget to ask the critical question, who am I? Being alone gives us the space to explore this question on a deeper level, away from the opinions and demands of the world. When we step into solitude, we are given the rare opportunity to reflect on our inner selves. It's a time when the noise of life quiets down, allowing us to hear our own thoughts and desires clearly. In this stillness, we discover things about ourselves that we may have previously overlooked or ignored. Perhaps we uncover talents, passions, or dreams that have been buried beneath the weight of other people's expectations. Maybe we confront painful truths about ourselves, fears, insecurities, or habits that have held us back. It is in these moments that we come to terms with both our strengths and weaknesses. Self-discovery in solitude is not always a comfortable process. It often requires us to confront uncomfortable truths, to wrestle with our past, and to acknowledge the things that we would rather avoid. Yet, this confrontation is essential for growth. It's easy to live a life defined by the opinions of others, to present a version of ourselves that is shaped by external pressures. But when we are alone, we are forced to strip away the layers of pretense and face who we really are beneath it all. In solitude, there is no hiding from the truth. And while that may feel difficult at times, it is in this honesty with ourselves that real transformation begins. The process of self-discovery is often accompanied by personal growth. As we explore who we are, we begin to understand what truly drives us, what motivates us, and what brings us joy. Through self-reflection, we are able to identify areas where we need to change, to heal, or to grow. The solitude creates space for us to work on those areas without external pressures influencing our decisions. It is during this time that we become aware of our weaknesses, and more importantly, we are given the opportunity to work on them. Growth is a continual process of refining our character, overcoming our limitations, and expanding our capacity to achieve what we are called to do. In solitude, we are not just discovering who we are, but we are being shaped into who we are meant to become. This period of reflection helps us develop the mental, emotional, and spiritual resilience necessary to navigate life's challenges. It's in solitude that we gain clarity and direction, which propels us forward into growth. As we grow, we begin to see the potential within us and understand the kind of person God is calling us to be. We no longer define ourselves by our failures or shortcomings, but by the vision that God has for our lives. We start to see ourselves not as we are in the present, but as we are becoming. The growth that happens in solitude is not always immediate or easy. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to be transformed. However, it is in these private moments of self-discovery that the foundation for lasting growth is laid. When we are willing to embrace the discomfort of being alone, we allow God to work in us, shaping us into individuals capable of fulfilling the great purpose He has designed for us. Building personal character is one of the most important aspects of the preparation process that God leads us through in solitude. Character is not something that can be manufactured overnight or obtained through external success. It is forged in the private moments, especially when no one is watching, when we are alone with our thoughts, struggles, and decisions. In the quiet solitude, God has the opportunity to shape and refine our character in a way that the busyness of life often does not allow. This process is essential for anyone who is called to greater responsibility, leadership, or influence. Character is the inner strength that defines how we respond to life's challenges, how we interact with others, and how we maintain our integrity when no one is looking. It is built through consistent choices, decisions made in the face of temptation, and the development of virtues such as honesty, humility, patience, and self-discipline. While talent and skill can open doors, it is character that will keep you standing when those doors open. Without a solid character foundation, even the highest elevation will be unsustainable. In solitude, we are often confronted with our weaknesses, those parts of ourselves we might prefer to avoid or ignore. It is in these moments that we can no longer pretend to be someone we are not. The distractions of the world fall away, and we are left to face our own fears, doubts, and imperfections. But this confrontation with our true selves is not meant to tear us down, it is meant to build us up. Through these private moments, God begins to shape us by helping us recognize areas that need transformation. Whether it's developing a more forgiving heart, learning to control our emotions, or cultivating an attitude of gratitude, these are the aspects of our character that God works on when we are alone with Him. One of the most powerful aspects of building character in solitude is the opportunity to develop self-discipline. Character is not formed in moments of ease. It is forged through overcoming obstacles, making the right choices, and remaining faithful to God's principles even when it's difficult. In solitude, we learn to discipline ourselves in ways that will serve us well when we are in the public eye. It is easy to act with integrity when there is no temptation, but the true test of character comes when we are faced with challenges and difficult situations. The quiet moments teach us to make the right decisions, to act in accordance with our values, and to stand firm in our convictions. Solitude also provides the space for personal reflection, which is necessary for growth in character. Without this time to pause and evaluate our lives, it's easy to continue on autopilot, making decisions without understanding the deeper motivations behind them. But when we are alone, we can ask ourselves important questions. Why did I react the way I did? Why do I struggle with this area of my life? What changes do I need to make in order to align my actions with my values? This reflective process helps us refine our character and become more intentional about who we are and who we want to become. God uses solitude as a crucible for building character because it is in these quiet, sometimes difficult moments that our true nature is revealed. He molds us into people of integrity, humility, and resilience, preparing us for the greater responsibilities that elevation will bring. Without the development of strong character, even the most significant opportunities or achievements can be quickly lost. But when we allow God to refine us in the secret place, we emerge stronger, more resilient, and more equipped to handle the responsibilities of the future. Developing a deep dependency on God is one of the most vital aspects of the solitary process. When we are alone, we are removed from the external sources of support and validation that we often rely on. In those quiet moments, stripped of distractions and the presence of others, we are confronted with the reality of our own limitations. This is where true dependence on God is cultivated, when we realize that we cannot navigate life's challenges by our own strength or wisdom alone. It is in these moments of solitude that we are invited to lean fully on God, trusting that He alone has the power to guide, sustain, and fulfill us. The dependency on God is not something that comes naturally to many of us. We live in a world that encourages self-sufficiency, independence, and self-reliance. We are often taught to trust in our own abilities and to look to ourselves for answers. However, God's way is different. His word tells us that His strength is made perfect in our weakness, 2 Corinthians 12:9. When we are in solitude, we are reminded that we are not enough on our own, and it is only through God's grace, guidance, and provision that we can move forward. In the quietness of being alone, we learn to stop relying on our own efforts and begin to trust in God's power and wisdom. One of the most profound ways solitude cultivates dependency on God is by revealing our vulnerabilities. When we are alone, we cannot hide behind the distractions of busy schedules or the facades we put up when we are with others. So we must confront our weaknesses and limitations head on. This is where God's love and grace come in. In these vulnerable moments, God reminds us that He is our refuge and strength, our very present help in times of trouble, Psalm 46:1. As we embrace our dependence on Him, we begin to experience His provision in ways we might have overlooked when we were self-reliant. It is in the absence of external support that we come to fully understand the depth of God's faithfulness and His constant presence with us. Solitude is also the place where we learn to hear God's voice more clearly. In the noise of everyday life, it is easy to miss His leading. But when we are alone with Him, without distractions, we are better able to listen for His guidance. It is in these quiet times that God speaks to us, showing us His direction, comforting us in our struggles, and revealing His plans for our lives. As we grow in our dependency on Him, we begin to recognize His voice more readily, learning to trust it over our own reasoning or the advice of others. We no longer rely on our own judgment or the opinions of the world, but seek His will in all things. Through solitude, we also learn to depend on God for our emotional and spiritual nourishment. Often we look to people, accomplishments, or material possessions to fill the void within us. But these things can never truly satisfy. Only God can provide the deep peace and joy that our hearts long for. In the absence of external comforts, we discover that He is our source of true fulfillment. Solitude allows us to draw nearer to Him, to be replenished by His presence, and to find our strength in His love. We learn to find satisfaction in Him alone, and this deepens our dependency on Him. In the end, developing dependency on God is a transformative process. When we are alone, we are forced to acknowledge that we cannot do life on our own. It is in these moments of solitude that we begin to let go of our own striving and embrace God's sufficiency. The more we lean on Him, the more we experience His provision, His peace, and His guidance. Our dependency on God grows stronger, and we are prepared for the elevation He has for us, knowing that He will lead us every step of the way. Refining your vision is a crucial aspect of the process that takes place when God leads you into solitude. In a world that constantly bombards us with distractions, opinions, and demands, it is easy for our vision to become clouded or misguided. Our dreams and aspirations can easily become influenced by external factors, what others expect from us, the pressures of society, or the desires for success and recognition. But it is in the quiet moments of solitude that God gives us the opportunity to refine our vision, to align it more closely with His will, and to see more clearly the path He has set before us. In solitude, we are able to strip away the noise and distractions that hinder our ability to see the true direction of our lives. Often we are so consumed by the busyness of life that we fail to ask the important question, what is God's vision for my life? Instead, we follow the plans and aspirations that the world has laid out for us. But when we are alone with God, we can step back and gain perspective. It is in these quiet moments that God has the space to speak to us, to clarify His purposes, and to help us see the bigger picture. In solitude, He refines our understanding of what truly matters and what He has called us to accomplish. This refining process often involves reevaluating our goals, desires, and dreams. When we are alone, we can take the time to reflect on whether our vision is truly aligned with God's will. Are we pursuing what He has called us to do, or are we chasing after things that are ultimately empty and unfulfilling? Solitude allows us to honestly assess whether our desires are shaped by our relationship with God or by the influence of the world around us. It is in this time of reflection that God redirects our hearts and minds, bringing clarity and focus to our vision. One of the most significant aspects of refining your vision in solitude is the opportunity to hear from God without distractions. In the silence, we are better able to tune into His voice. Often, God speaks in stillness, guiding us with gentle promptings and whispers. When we are surrounded by the noise of daily life, it can be difficult to hear His leading. But when we step into solitude, we create the space for God to speak clearly into our hearts. He reveals aspects of our vision that we may have overlooked or ignored, showing us the next steps He desires for us to take. It is in these moments of solitude that we are given the wisdom to navigate the complexities of life and to align our vision with God's perfect will. Solitude also allows us to refine our vision by strengthening our faith. As we spend time alone with God, we are reminded of His faithfulness and power. He renews our confidence in His ability to bring His plans to fruition. Our vision becomes clearer because we are no longer relying on our own strength, but on the assurance that God will make a way even when we cannot see it. In this process of refining, our vision grows stronger, rooted in the knowledge that God is faithful to fulfill every promise He has made. We learn to trust His timing, His guidance, and His provision, even when the path seems uncertain. In solitude, we also gain the clarity needed to see the obstacles and challenges that may lie ahead. When we are constantly surrounded by the noise of life, it is easy to ignore or overlook the potential barriers to our vision. But in the quiet, God helps us see the challenges with greater perspective. He shows us where we need to grow, what we need to prepare for, and the wisdom we need to overcome difficulties. Through solitude, our vision becomes sharper, more refined, and more equipped to handle the road ahead. God uses these moments to equip us for the challenges that will come. preparing us to walk out our vision with greater confidence and resilience. Ultimately, refining your vision in solitude is a process of aligning your heart and mind with God's perfect plan for your life. It is in these quiet moments that God clears away the clutter and distractions, enabling you to see more clearly the purpose and direction He has for you. As you spend time alone with Him, your vision becomes more focused, more aligned with His will, and more equipped to fulfill the calling He has placed on your life. Preparation for greater responsibility is a fundamental part of God's process in solitude. Often we desire promotion, leadership, or the recognition that comes with success. But what we fail to recognize is that before God elevates us to new levels of responsibility, He first prepares us in the quiet, hidden places. It is in solitude that we are shaped, refined, and made ready for the greater responsibilities that lie ahead. In these moments of aloneness, God equips us with the strength, wisdom, and character needed to handle what is to come. So one of the primary aspects of this preparation is the development of inner strength. When we are alone, far from the eyes of others, we can focus on building resilience in our hearts and minds. The demands of leadership and responsibility require emotional stability and the ability to remain steadfast in difficult times. Solitude provides the space for God to strengthen us from the inside out. Without the distractions of external pressures, we learn to rely on God for our strength rather than our own abilities. In these private moments, God teaches us patience, perseverance, and faithfulness, qualities that are essential for handling the weight of responsibility. Preparation for greater responsibility also involves the cultivation of wisdom. In solitude, we have the opportunity to reflect deeply on our experiences and the lessons we have learned. Wisdom is not something that can be gained through surface-level understanding. It comes from a deep personal relationship with God and a willingness to learn from the challenges we face. Solitude gives us the time to process our past experiences, to ask God for insight, and to gain the perspective necessary for making wise decisions in the future. As we learn to listen for God's guidance in these quiet moments, our capacity to lead and take on responsibility increases. In the stillness of solitude, we also develop the character necessary to handle greater responsibilities. Leadership, influence, and promotion come with immense challenges, and it is easy for pride, ego, or a desire for recognition to take root in our hearts. But in solitude, we confront our flaws and weaknesses, allowing God to refine our character. He teaches us humility, integrity, and service qualities that ensure we remain grounded and focused on His purposes rather than our own agendas. God prepares us to handle responsibility not for our glory but for His. He shapes our hearts so that we are more concerned with serving others and fulfilling His will than with seeking personal validation. Solitude also provides an opportunity to develop the discipline required for greater responsibility. Responsibility often demands consistency, focus, and the ability to manage multiple tasks or pressures at once. In the quiet moments of solitude, we can cultivate the discipline to make the right choices, to stay focused on the things that matter, and to remain steadfast in our commitments. It is in these moments of personal reflection that we learn to prioritize what is truly important and to develop the habits that will sustain us when we are entrusted with greater responsibilities. Moreover, solitude allows us to prepare spiritually for the weight of responsibility. The challenges of leadership are not merely external, they are spiritual as well. It is in solitude that we strengthen our relationship with God, deepening our ability to hear His voice and discern His will. As we spend time alone with Him, He equips us spiritually to face the challenges of leadership with courage and faith. We gain the strength to make decisions that align with His kingdom purposes and the ability to lead with compassion, wisdom, and humility. Without this spiritual preparation, even the most gifted individuals can falter when faced with the pressures of leadership. In essence, the preparation for greater responsibility that takes place in solitude is a holistic process. It involves building inner strength, gaining wisdom, developing character, cultivating discipline, and growing spiritually. These elements work together to shape us into individuals who are ready to handle the greater responsibility that God desires to entrust to us. Through solitude, God prepares us not just for what we are called to do, but for who we need to become in order to fulfill our calling with grace, humility, and excellence. It is in these quiet moments that God equips us for the challenges ahead, ensuring that when the time for elevation comes, we are ready to embrace it with confidence and faith. In conclusion, the process of being alone before elevation is not one of abandonment, but of divine preparation. Solitude is where God molds us, shapes us, and equips us for the greater responsibilities He desires to entrust to us. It is in these quiet moments that we learn to align our vision with His will, develop a deeper dependency on Him, build character, and discover our true purpose. Through self-reflection and spiritual growth, we are refined for the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. The time spent in solitude is not wasted. It is an essential part of the journey that strengthens us, clarifies our direction, and prepares us for the greater heights God has for us. As we embrace this season of aloneness, we position ourselves for elevation that is rooted in His wisdom, strength, and purpose, ensuring that when the time comes, we will be ready to step into the fullness of His calling.